We ask that everyone use their first name only. Some of us use our last initial or where we're from. And if you need help renaming yourself on screen, just let us know and we can help you. So to avoid background noise, please remember to mute your microphones unless you're sharing. So we're going to start with the Serenity Prayer, which I am going to put on the screen, although I'm sure everybody knows it. We'll have a moment of silence for the friends and family members who have not yet found the rooms of Naranan, followed by the Serenity Prayer, which is on the screen or on page 1 of your blue book. We'll take that moment now, please. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And we know that at Naranan meetings, only one person speaks at a time, and we do not engage in dialogue, debate, or crosstalk during our meeting. Many of us are accustomed to taking care of other people and not taking responsibility for our own lives. So in these meetings, we speak only about our own experiences and feelings. We accept without comment what others say because it is true for them. We work toward taking more responsibility in our own lives rather than giving advice to others. So I'm going to start tonight by asking Pam if she'll read the newcomer's welcome. And I'm going to pop that on the screen.
Okay.
Yep, whenever you're ready, Pam.
Okay. The Naranan family group is primarily for you who know or have known a feeling of desperation concerning the addiction problem of someone very near to you. We have traveled that unhappy road too and found the answer with serenity and peace of mind. When you come into the family group, you are no longer alone, but among true friends who understand your problem as few others could. We will respect your confidence and anonymity, as we know you will respect ours. We hope to give you the assurance that no situation is too difficult and no unhappiness is too great to be overcome. Our program, which is not a religious one, but a spiritual way of life, is based on the 12 steps of Naranan. We have found that the working of these steps will bring the solution to practically any problem. We urge you to take this program and its 12 steps seriously. It has been as helpful to us as the Narcotics Anonymous program is to the addict. We only ask for the wisdom and courage to see ourselves as we really are and to do something about ourselves with the help of a higher power as we understand this, and for the grace to release our addicts with love and cease trying to change them. Keep an open mind and attend as many meetings as possible. Feel free to share during the meeting. You may ask questions after the meeting. You will soon make new friends and will feel very much a part of the group. With the understanding that addiction is a disease and the realization that we are powerless over it, as well as over other people's lives, we are ready to do something useful and constructive with our own. Then and only then can we be of any help to others. Thank you for letting me read.
Thank you, Pam. Mark, can you read the 12 steps?
Sure can. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
The 12 steps of Naranan family groups. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over the addict, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you for letting me serve, Lisa.
Thank you, Marg. Okay, Betty, can you read the 12 traditions, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Our group experience suggests that the unity of the Naranon family groups depends upon our adherence to these traditions. Number 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends on unity. Number 2, for our group purposes, there is but one authority, a loving God, as He may express Himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the relatives of addicts, when gathered for mutual aid, may call themselves a Naranon family group, provided that as a group they have no other affiliation. The only requirement for membership is that there be a problem of addiction in a relative or friend. 4, each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other Naranon family groups or NA as a whole. 5, each Naranon family group has but one purpose, to help families of addicts. We do this by practicing the 12 steps of Naranon, by encouraging and understanding our addicted relatives, and by welcoming and giving comfort to families of addicts. 6, our family groups ought never to endorse, finance, or lend our name to any outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary spiritual aim. But although a separate entity, we should always cooperate with Narcotics Anonymous. 7, each group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Naranon 12th step work should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, our groups as such ought never to be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, the Naranon family groups have no opinion on outside issues, hence our name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, films, internet, and other forms of mass media. We need guard with special care the anonymity of all NA members. And number 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles above personalities. Thank you for letting me serve.
Thank you, Betty. And Carolyn, I will put the sesh reading up for you.
Oh, I just know it off by heart if you just.
Well, I figured you would, but I didn't want you to show off.
Okay, all right.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so November 29th from our daily sesh reading, A Better Way to Live. All of my life, I've been surrounded by dysfunction, alcoholism, depression, and drug addiction. At an early age, I began covering up my feelings. I was sure if I was happy and helpful to those around me, everything would be okay. I took care of everything and everyone, but I forgot to take care of myself. I thought I was in control. After many years in an abusive marriage, I realized I had no control over anyone, not even myself. When I found Naranon and his 12 steps and the spiritual principles, I was able to see that I am worthy of a better life. I am finally learning how to take control of my life and take care of me. That abusive relationship is many years in the past. I didn't change the addicts in my life. I changed the way I responded to them. By working the 12 steps, I found recovery over my old dysfunctional behaviors. Attending Naranon meetings has given me a sense of well-being and support. The shared experience of those in the program give me strength and hope. I will be forever grateful to Naranon for showing me a better way to live. The thought for today, when we fully understand and accept that addiction is a disease, and that it is both mental and physical, and that we are powerless over it, We become ready to learn a better way to live from the Narnon Blue Book. And the quote, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Maya Angelou. Thank you for letting me serve.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm just going to give a couple of quick announcements, and then we will be ready to hear from Lori. So I'm going to quickly read these out, but I will post them in the chat in a few minutes. So our seventh tradition, we have no dues or fees, but there are monthly costs for the Zoom platform, phone line, website, etc. We are fully self-supporting through our own contributions. Voluntary donations can be made by e-transfer or through PayPal if you're in a country other than Canada. And you can send those to helpinghandandheart22@gmail.com. Our donations are voluntary, and every dollar helps go toward those above mentioned things. Our donations are down considerably this year across the region, which is not surprising. So every little bit will help. Just a couple of Narnon events. The Rocky Mountain Cruise that's happening in February, which I can't believe is coming up in really just 2 months. I'll see if I can pop a poster in the chat for that. Ontario Region has been doing a tradition study on the last Saturday of each month. So if you go to narnonontario.com, you'll find the login information for that. Or Sue, I don't know if you have a poster, you could put that in the chat. The Rocky Mountain New Year, New You 24-hour house party, which is held on New Year's Eve, starting at 8 p.m. on December 31st and running to 8 p.m. on January 1st, is happening again this year. It'll be the 4th year. Our name for Helping Hand and Heart has been approved for the 9 a.m. time slot, and I've been officially told our topic is attitude of gratitude, which is perfect way to start 2025. I will have a full schedule of the 24 groups and each topic by December 22nd. And I did receive an email this week. There are 2 slots left to fill out of the 24 hours. So if anyone else is interested, just put your email in the chat and I'll get the information to you. And that's about it. Are there any other announcements for the good of Naranon that anybody would like to share? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay, let's get started. So we have 2 speakers for tonight. I love our Ontario Speaks night because we get to hear 2 different perspectives and lots of experience, strength, and hope. So tonight we're going to start with Lori, and Lori is a Naranon member. So Lori, whenever you're ready, you can go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Hello, everyone. My name is Lori, and I'm a proud member of Naranon since March 31st, 2023, about a year and a half ago. My qualifier is my 34-year-old son, and tonight I'd like to share my story with you. So when I was first asked to speak tonight, my first thought was, who, me? I'm no expert. But then I remembered the first time I found Naranon, it was a speaker meeting. And I thought, if I would have found Naranon 10 years earlier and learned the tools and boundaries I know now, perhaps my son's life would be different. Addiction is a progressive disease, and because I didn't know that, I kept trying to help him by enabling him, and that thus contributing to his decline. If I can help one person, one newcomer who is early in the disease process, or somebody who's further on, like I was, even in my nervousness, it's worth it then to speak. So here we go. So here's a little history of my son, my ALO. He was born healthy and beautiful, and in his early years, he had some, minor health issues, just ear infections and tonsillitis, but it just seemed that his speech and his general knowledge was a little behind. And in JK, he was red flagged, and then we did some testing, and grade the middle years, and he was diagnosed with ADHD and a mild learning disability. About grade 7 or 8, after a lot of consideration, we decided to put him on Ritalin for a year, and it helped him. But sure enough, the kids found out and called him Ritalin boy, and he came to me one day and said, "Mom, it just takes away my spirit." So we stopped it. But he was happy and social and chatty and almost class clownish, and always eager to make others laugh and be happy. I realize now it may have been his way of coping and people pleasing like myself. So when he was in grade 9, his father and I split, and we were quite amicable and co-parented. And his older brother was really angry and showed it, but he was fine, he said. And we started drinking and binge drinking and smoking and marijuana. And I thought it was just normal teenage stuff, like his older brother. In fact, once he got suspended for smoking pot, and I marched him down to the soup kitchen to volunteer for those 3 days. And little did I know his future. But he did graduate from high school and actually went to a year to college. And I was bound and bet one of my boys were going to college, and that's my control issues. And of course, he just partied. So after that, he started to work, and he decided to go live with his dad. And that's really when the trouble began, was in his 20s. And I think it was kind of the perfect storm for addiction: the ADHD, the family history of alcoholism, low self-esteem, the trauma of the divorce as a trigger, perhaps. He has told me that it did really burst his bubble when our family broke up. So his dad had a rule: no drugs, no pot even. And after a couple of years, he basically said, "It's time for you to get your own place." So I was living out in the country and in a new relationship, and it wasn't going to work for him to move out there. So I felt, kind of guilty about all that and about the divorce. So I tried to make up for it by paying for his rent, paying for his cell phone, groceries, and car insurance. And, he had low-paying jobs, and I was just trying to help him. But apparently, he had started to use cocaine, the good stuff. And I was in complete denial. Then came the lost cell phones, the tickets, the payday loans, finally a DUI after we'd given him a car. And he started getting really abusive and on his cell phone with texts. And I almost got like PSTD, where you'd hear that bling of the text message, and he would say some really horrible things that a mother never wants to hear from their son. And I would delete them so my husband wouldn't see it, and it was just, I was starting to become a real mess. And I didn't understand, like, why was he being so irresponsible? I felt like I was being punished and just trying to help my son, but I didn't realize I was enabling him to be more comfortable in his drugs, using his drugs, and without consequence. And I was contributing to the progression of this horrible disease of addiction. And I felt this mistaken responsibility to fix him. I was his mother. Isn't that my job? So here I was, 62, newly retired, and should have been happy and settled at this stage in my life. And instead, I was a mess. My second marriage of 15 years was on the brink of divorce, and I had to stop. So one of my biggest fears was that my son would become homeless. Well, he did. When I finally stopped paying for everything and his government unemployment ran out, and nobody would let him couch surf anymore, he called me on a New Year's Day. He had been out in the streets over Christmas, and I was going crazy. He was on fentanyl at this point, and I had tried everything to get him help. I took him to the doctor, and the doctor said he needed a psychiatrist, and he wouldn't go to the psychiatrist. And he said he was fine. He didn't need help. I begged him to go to rehab, and all he needed was money. So my husband and I, at that point, I did have a boundary that I wouldn't see him alone. We took him to a shelter where at least I knew he would get food and a bed. But still, I was a mess and I felt so guilty. And I was caught in the middle. I was addicted to the well being of my son and codependent with my husband, trying to keep everybody happy. This was my insanity. How could this happen to my beautiful boy? I hit my bottom. Then the miracle happened. I always prayed and had God in my life. So I fell to my knees and surrendered. And I said, God, help me. I can't do this alone. And that same day, something made me think about Naranon, hearing about it. And I searched the internet and I saw there was a speaker meeting. And that night there was a mom and 2 addict sons from NA. And wow, it was profound. I knew I was home and I knew it was God guiding me and answering my prayers for help. I was sick too. I immediately started attending Naranon via Zoom. And it was pretty much every day for about 6 months. I'd either go to an Ontario meeting at night or the Rocky Mountain meeting in the evening. And I thought Naranon would tell me how to fix my son, but I soon realized I needed to work on fixing myself. So I always tried to get up courage to share. And I heard them say, listen to learn, share to heal, and keep coming back. And I did. And after 4 months, I was guided actually by 2 people in 1 week. So I knew it was my higher power telling me to a retreat at Westover on codependency. So I signed up and I went. And it was about a 2-month waiting period. And I kind of started thinking, oh, I was doing a lot better. And do I really need this? But I would talk to one of my best friends who had listened to me for years, and she said, yes, you need it. So I went, and it was really, really, really amazing. So I just wanted to share one. I had a special moment that week. I was sitting on a park bench. I was at break. It was pretty intense, and mentally. So I was just having a break. It was a sunny August afternoon, and I was just had my head down, a little prayer, and I looked up, and in this country road, this truck went by, and it was a big Mack truck, and on the trailer it said GRACE, and it said grace. And for me, it was just that little sign from my higher power. It's like the grace of God wrapped around me, and just I felt peace. So after that, I was guided to go back to church and to Bible study. And all this while, my marriage was healing and I was healing. I was much more at peace and serenity, and my son was seeing it too. Because of my boundaries, he had stopped verbally abusing me and demanding money. He was still in the throes of addiction, but our relationship was better. It was more open and honest. And I'd gotten him to the doors 2 times to rehab, but neither time he went in because I wanted it more than him, and I did all the work. I was taking him to the meetings or getting the assessments done, making sure he made those 2-week calls to stay on the list. And I realize now, I heard one addict speaker from NA say, don't believe what I say. It's all lies. Look at what I do. Only my actions are truths. So just another time, it was kind of a tough one because I took him out. I'd go out, take him out for lunch. And this one time I took him out for lunch and I picked him up and I knew he wasn't great. And my little voice was telling me, just go through drive-through. But I took him inside and he went in the washroom while we were waiting for the food, and I'm sure he used in the washroom. And he came out and, he couldn't even eat, and his head just went down on the table. And somehow I got out of there, gathered the food, gathered him up somehow and got him back to the shelter. And I was really, really down, and I really thought I was losing hope. And I was driving home and I had tears coming down my cheeks, and I just was at a red light. I looked up and here there was this car in front of me, and it had a bumper sticker, and it said, with God, all things are possible. And it was just like, wow. It gave me hope, when just told me that even though when you think things are really, really bad, it's going to be okay. In the meantime, I kept thinking about the 12 steps, and, we say it works if you work it and you're worth it. So I got up the courage to ask for a sponsor. I kind of thought, I'm not an addict. Why do I need to do the 12 steps? But I realized I am an addict. I was addicted to my son. So I learned I truly am powerless over my ALO and anyone but myself. I learned the 3 C's. I didn't cause it, can't control it, I can't cure it. I learned I was far from perfect myself, controlling, lying, judgmental, perfectionist. And I learned acceptance and detaching with love and to not live in constant fear and anxiety. I learned to live in truth and to forgive myself for my shortcomings and my mistakes. And I know my higher power has too. And by step 11, I felt a spiritual awakening and closer to God than I ever have been. And after years of searching in the new age and feeling lost, I finally felt some peace that God's got this. So by then, because of Naranon, I was finally strong enough to let my son face his own consequences of his addictions and stealing. And he was sentenced to 3 months in jail. I didn't get him a lawyer. I didn't do anything. And it's another one of my greatest fears, my son in jail. But actually, I was happy he got sober, albeit on methadone. But at least he was sober and I could talk to my real son again for the first time in years. I knew this was his higher power at work too. Oh, and a side note, about a month before he was sentenced, we had lunch and he was in the car and I kind of went out on a limb and I kind of said, "Oh, can we pray? Can I pray for you?" And I held his hand and I prayed. And at the end of it, he had tears and he said he felt his higher power. And for him, it's God as well. But, and he was really moved. So the next day he called me and he says, "Mom," he said, I think I really need to go to jail because that's the only way I'm going to get sober." Because he just still refused to go to rehab. And so it turned out to be true. He did go. And while he was there, we talked about, what he was going to do when he gets out. And of course, he didn't want rehab, but he agreed that a sober recovery house would be good for him. And long story short, when he got out, he went to his dad's for a week and he made all the arrangements himself. It was all set up. He was excited. But in the 11th hour, he just changed his mind again and decided to go to a friend's instead. So that's kind of where it is now. It's the roller coaster of addiction, no control, and makes no sense. But there's so much I don't know as he tries for better or worse to cope with his life from the Blue Book. I know his higher power is guiding him, and although he hasn't chosen sobriety yet, I still have hope and the faith that he is choosing recovery in his own way. And I know his higher power is there with him. Who am I to judge how he gets there? I'm not God. My job is to love him. So today I'm happy and at peace most days. Of course, I can have an off day when I feel sad or sorry for myself and my son, but I've learned progression, not perfection, and to not dwell on the past or obsess about the unknown future. I used to think about him obsessively from the first thing in the morning to when I went to sleep. But now I pray for him every day, and I really do let go and let God. I make the good in my life a priority and also the good in my son's life. Today he's alive. He was sober for 3 months, and his body, mind, and spirit had some healing time. I use the many tools I've learned at Naranon, like I go to my weekly family group meetings. I'll go to a meeting in between if I need to. I call my sponsor and our buddy. I read my sesh. I pray. For me, I go to church and Bible study, nature walks, and I cherish the time with my husband, my kids, and 5 grandkids, and my dear friends. This all helps me to enjoy the many blessings in my life and to most of all be grateful and humble. I hope my story may help you on your journey, and I thank you for listening and giving me a chance to give back. I really do believe the more we can give back and help others through sharing our experience, strength, and hope, through service like leading a meeting or volunteering or just listening to an Hour Bunny, can help make such a difference in our own healing recovery. And that's why I keep coming back. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Lori.
And you keep coming back. Is right, Lori. It's nice to see you, and thank you very much for sharing with us tonight. So now I'm going to turn it over right away to our guest, Candace, who is here tonight to talk to us about her experience, strength, and hope. And Candace is from, oh, she's going to unmute. Candace
There
is
we go.
from Cocaine Anonymous,
Yes.
I think.
I'm
Okay.
actually from Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous. I
Okay.
have I identify as an addict and an alcoholic.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm
Welcome.
Candace. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Um, I just wanted to share like a quick experience. I had never been to an Al-Anon or a Nar-Anon meeting, and I had the opportunity to speak at the Innisfil one, and being able to hear the other side was beautiful because to be honest, I'm on both sides. So I guess I will kind of get into it here. Um, whew. So a little brief history. Um, I grew up kind of basically looking outside into my family. I felt very segregated from them. I would watch them lovingly, like, love each other, and I felt very discluded. I felt a lot of abandonment. I felt a lot of neglect as a child. And I also suffered a lot of abuse from my mother, which is much different than my sisters. So that drove kind of a huge wedge in between us. And now that I'm in recovery, I can really see the isms starting from a very, very young age. Like I can kind of see it and how it progressed and why. Um, did that make me an addict or an alcoholic? I'm not sure, but I can see it. So that kind of started some really unhealthy coping mechanisms for me. I just wanted people to love me. I would wear different masks, whatever I thought you needed from me, I would become that person at that specific time. I ended up leaving home really early. I was 15 years old. I started using at 12. And I skipped the alcohol. I went right to hard drugs. So that was interesting. I had kind of been shipped off to live with my mother, who was abusive. She was living in Calgary, completely different world than where I was living in Ontario in Thunder Bay. Um, and then I went back because it was a terrible experience. But anyways, um, once I touched a substance, everything changed for me. And what I wish someone would have told me was the good things about alcohol and drugs. The second you touch that substance, everything that you hate about yourself, every problem you have, it's going to go. It's going to disappear and you are going to feel content and everything's going to be okay. The problem with that is that it is completely false. Um, it was my solution for a very long time. I was a 0 or 100 person, and rarely was I ever at 0. I was always at 100. That's the way that I used. I don't really need to go into much more detail. I think that explains the type of addict and alcoholic that I was. To put it blatantly, I was doing mine, I was doing yours, I was doing this person's, I was stealing from my own stash. I was a disaster. I was a walking disaster, and it was to give myself some ease and comfort because I was so uncomfortable with who I was and I didn't even realize who I was. I was so full of shame and guilt and hurt and pain and trauma that I was just incapable of facing life on life's terms. I was incapable. I searched for the love that I was taught, that negative love, that abusive love. I searched for that in relationships. It was welcoming, like I welcomed it because it was comforting. That made me feel like I was loved. I could not understand like healthy relationships at all. I didn't get it. Um, I would much rather be treated terribly because I felt like that was how people loved you. I truly did. Um, and as I got older, my using just, it was terrible. Like it was never, I can honestly say, like, I do remember some good times, but for the most part, I just remember numbing out my feelings completely. That's it. Like, that was my number one goal. Like, do not feel at all. Um, and I would just continuously end up in these relationships that were very harmful. And what happened because of that was everything that I had promised myself I would not become, I eventually became. I would have a line, I'm not going to do this. And then I would do that. And then I would have another one, and I'm not going to do that. And then I would do that. I suffered a lot of abuse throughout the years, but I also welcomed it. Um, it's some people don't really understand this when I say it, but I created cycles that were comforting. So if I knew you were going to hit me, I would almost encourage you to do that because that made me feel like somebody loved me. And I know that that sounds really messed up to say, but in recovery, what I learned was that I had a hand in those cycles, and not that it makes it okay. I'm not victim blaming, but that was the reality. Um, oh, it gives me goosebumps. Sorry. So, so that happened. Many relationships that I shouldn't have been in. I have 5 children. I'm gonna just skip right to my most recent bottom. Actually, I'm going to share one bottom with you. When I was 19 years old, I was heavily addicted to ecstasy. I was 79 pounds. I'm about 115 now, and I ended up in the hospital. I do not remember most of it. I had to go in for surgery right away. I was dying, basically. Um, and the doctor came in, I'm 19 years old, and he was like, if you don't change your life, you're going to die. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I left the hospital. I went immediately and used. I ripped open my stitches without a care in the world because I didn't care about me. I cared about numbing the feelings that were inside of me. And I didn't care about anybody else either. I wish that I could tell you that I got clean and sober for my children, but I did not. They were not enough to keep me sober, and I love them with every ounce of my being. Chokes me up to say that. But I was incapable of getting sober for them. I had charges. I lost a lot of things in my life. I had no relationship with family. And it was all my own doing. I caused a lot of suffering. And I caused a lot of suffering for myself. That was what I chose. I chose suffering. It was comfortable. So whenever throughout my life, I'll be 40 in January, I would look back on that 19-year-old bottom and I would be like, it's not that bad. But what I didn't understand until this time was that it didn't look that bad externally, but what was happening inside of me was much worse. I was basically destroying every ounce of my being. I was not a human anymore. I had no emotional value. I couldn't see past my pain. I wanted to love you. I wanted to take care of you. I wanted to be there for you. But the reality was my pain consumed me. And drugs and alcohol took that away for a brief period of time. So what happened was February 10th, 2023, I had all 5 of my children living with me. They should have been taken away. They were living in a trap house. My house was a trap house. It was an absolute disaster. I was living to drink and living to use, and I needed both of them to live. So I was sitting in my bathroom. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. And I had come to the realization that this was going to be my last day, and I was okay with that. I was comfortable with that. I was happy to go. Um, and then something inside of me, like for I don't even obviously it was God. It took me a long time to understand that, but something inside of me said like there has to be more for you than this. And I had tried meetings before. I had been somewhat sober on my own during pregnancies and whatnot, but I could never get it. I could never get it. And I was even more insane sober than I was using. My brain was just a mess. There was a mention of ADHD. I suffer. I don't want to say I suffer from it because I do have a lot of fun with my friends, but in my brain. But uh, anyways, I also have ADHD, and I was on medication for a brief period of time, and it was also very hard for me. I'll get back to that eventually. But anyways, so my brain has always been just a million miles a minute all the time. It doesn't shut off. And I didn't realize the correlation between ADHD and cocaine use. It's very prevalent. Anyways, so yeah, I'm sitting in my bathroom. I have this thought, and I did something different that day. I'd called somebody that I had known from the program, and he promised me he would meet me at a meeting at 8 o'clock, and he did not. And I was so angry at the time. Was so mad at him. Like, how dare you not show up for me? But I can honestly tell you every couple months I go and I thank him because it was the best thing he did for me. It was honestly the best thing that he did for me. I had to walk through that door full of my pain, full of shame, full of guilt, and I had to be ready. If he would have walked me through that door, I truly believe that I would not be here speaking to you today because I probably wouldn't be alive. So I'm very grateful for that. Um, when I went in this time, if you could see my insides on the outside, I would probably expect it would look somewhat like I was in a horrific car accident because I was that broken. Um, I've always been the type of person that everything has to be completely smashed to pieces before anything changes for me. But this time, there was something different. There was a desperation. Like I had nothing left in me. I really didn't. I was just there. And I went into that meeting and had a temper tantrum because I was a very angry addict. Anger was my blanket emotion. I used it for everything. And what I've realized in recovery is that anger is a secondary emotion. So when you're feeling that anger monster, there's normally something attached to that. It means I have work to do. And there are still times I wake up and choose violence. I try not to these days, but it happens. Um, Anyways, I walked into the meeting, I met my sponsor, and I was willing to do anything they told me to do, almost anything. The God thing was very, very, very hard for me at first. I truly believed that if there was a God, he hated me because of all the things I had gone through. So I had just decided that there wasn't one and that I hated him too. And it took a very long time for me to get over that hump. And I actually was talking to a friend of mine today about this. I think my recovery, so today I have 658 days clean and sober. Um, and I don't think, thank you. I don't think that my relationship with God really strengthened until about 2 months ago. Like that's when everything changed for me. Um, but anyways, I'll get to that in 1 second. Yeah, so I started doing everything that I was supposed to do. I went to meetings, I did the steps. I went through the most horrendous trauma at the beginning of my recovery. And I'll tell you a little bit about that because I think it's important. So in the first 6 months of my recovery, my daughter had decided, my oldest daughter is 18 now, and my youngest child is 6. There's 5 of them, 18, 17, 13, 11, and 6 now. So when I first got clean and sober, my oldest daughter decided that she was gonna go out and she was gonna take my place. And that was very, very, very hard. So I had to very quickly learn how to lovingly detach. Um, and I had to ask her to leave my home. And that was really hard because I didn't want to. I wanted to be there for them, you know, and it almost made me angry because I was like, look at how good I'm doing. Why are you doing this to me? Selfish, right? Like how how selfish is that? But what I didn't understand was I'm not in control of their healing. I'm not in control of the path that they take. I can be there as a guide, I can be there as support, but I am not there to write it for them. So at 2 months, I got a phone call. She was in a really bad car accident at 3:30 in the morning. But I did something different there too, and this is how I know this program works and why it's so near and dear to my heart. I was only 2 months into the work. And I didn't think, why is this happening to me? I thought, what am I grateful for right now? Well, one, I'm sober and I heard the phone, right? I can get in my car and I can get to the hospital without getting into a car accident or, you know, like there was a number of things. And I was able to be there for her without putting my feelings in the mix, right? I was able to just be there for her. And she did end up coming home. And then there were rules. She did not follow them. And at 4 months, her friend and her snuck out at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was woken up at 7 a.m. to her friend overdosing in my basement. And again, she's alive today, so I just want to throw that out there really quick. Again, instead of thinking, why is this happening to me? I, I immediately went to what am I grateful for? I know exactly what to do. I called 911. I didn't have to run around my house searching for what I have to flush down the toilet. Like I was very grateful in that moment, and I was able to be there for her. My daughter ended up doing 4 days in rehab, and she's hasn't touched anything since. So I'm really, really proud of her. But these things I'm grateful that I used to get really angry at people who were like, recovery is amazing. I'd be like, you're lying. I don't know what you're talking about because it was painful for me. Um, but looking back, I am so grateful that things happened the way that they did because they taught me to rely on something greater than myself. Like I would never have been able to get through any of this stuff without this program, without the people that I've attached to. But the one thing that really changed everything for me was my sponsor ended up in the hospital and I was not able to access her. And I had to really, really, really dig deep and rely on something greater than myself instead of external people, instead of people, places, and things. Because I'm very good at making something else my higher power. I really had to rely on him. And at this point, my life was an absolute disaster. I was trying to manage everything. I was back to trying to control everything. I'm full of pain, full of guilt, full of shame again. And then finally one day I just broke down and I planted my feet on the grass and I begged for him to carry the burden. Please help me. And all of a sudden, everything just dissipated. Like, why it took me so long, like 18, 19 months, I have no idea. I like to learn the hard way, obviously. Um, and since then, I I can't even begin to tell you like how much my life has changed. I get to do the most beautiful things in recovery. I've spoken at a high school twice to share my story of hope and recovery. All of my kids live at home and they all like me. Every single one of them. Most of the time. Sometimes they don't. But most of the time, we get along very well. You know, we watch movies together. We make memories that I remember. They don't have to, they're not scared when I come home or when I wake up in the morning, which mom they're going to get. Um, Today I get to do so many beautiful things, to be honest. And to be completely honest, I shouldn't be here. I should not be here. What I really want to drive home because I think is so important is I never wanted to hurt anybody. When I look back on my career as an addict and an alcoholic, I never wanted to hurt anybody. And this year, I've really, really, really been shown the amount of suffering and the amount of pain that I caused. And there's nothing I can do that will change that except for continue on this road to recovery and show people change behavior every day. Whew. I was able to make an amends with my dad, who I didn't see for 12 years. He showed up at my house from BC, and I was terrified. And we got in the car to go get pizza for the kids. And I told him I wanted to make my amends to him, and he said yes. And I started to, and I was able to explain to him some of the things. And he cut me off and he said, you know, Candace, there were a lot of things I should have done for you and that I could have done for you. And I didn't. And there's no excuse for why. And we left it at that. And we talk now. After 12 years of not being able to communicate or understand each other in any way, we're able to do that today. I also live with somebody in active addiction, and it's teaching me that one, I am not recovered completely. I have a lot of work to do. It is teaching me that I can't change other people. I have to let them live their own life. I have to let them walk their own path, but I also don't have to be part of it. Um, I'm very, very, very grateful for the life that I get to live today. I'll be celebrating 2 years in February, and my life it's not easy, but it is so much better than it was. I get to do these amazing things. I get to build relationships that are full of substance rather than built on substances, which is great. And I love that. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to end there. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm really emotional today, so I apologize. But thank you.
No apology necessary. Thank you so much, Candace.
Thank you, Candace.
Congratulations. And keep coming back. I think that's a message that we can all say. Something that you said that really stands out in my mind is um, I just lost my train of thought. I keep getting this message on the screen and it's distracting me. But it's why is she doing this to me? And I think that most of us who are